Tired of flexing in the mirror and realizing that your legs just look like twigs holding up the rest of your physique? Trust me, I've been there. But skipping leg day is one of the cardinal sins of the gym, and I'm here to help you fix that. Because the truth is, no hero is built on a weak foundation. Goku, Batman, Baki, every one of them has legs to carry their power. In this video, I'll show you 9 leg exercises utilizing little to no equipment that will build size, strength, and power anywhere you train from. So let's get to work and make sure your legs match the rest of your hero build. So the first of our exercises that you can do really from anywhere for your legs is gonna be one of the ones that you have the most bang for your buck. If you haven't done it before, you've at least heard of it, and that is the squat. Now, there are a lot of different variations of squat that you can do. The first that I'll just show you is a simple body weight squat. The reason why, because you can do this from your hotel room, you can do this in your home, you can do it in the gym, you can do it anywhere. So the basics of the squat is that you want to stand to where your hips, your feet are about hip width apart, maybe shoulder width, somewhere around there. Depends on the way your body's made, if you have long limbs, short limbs, that sort of stuff. I won't go into all of that, but basically just pick one that's comfortable for you. Now from there, some people think you have to have your toes straight ahead, and that's actually not the case. We actually want to have them slightly pointed out. Now when you do that and you squat down, you should have your knees go in the same direction as your toes as you do that. What one will look like is this. So I like to keep my hands out here. And the very first movement to really get my mind right and to go down appropriately is to stick my hips out and then go down at the knees. If you go down at the knees first, you tend to put a lot of tension on the front of your foot. So one looks like this, just like that. And I'm going down to about parallel to the ground or so. You can go further down. You can go just a little higher up, whatever feels the most comfortable for you. But generally, the further down you go, the better. Now, I'm not super flexible enough to where I can go all the way down without something like this. If I get a couple of plates, you can use like books or whatever at the house or in the hotel room or wherever you may find yourself. But just something like that's maybe an inch, half an inch or so that can raise your heels up. Now, watch the difference in my technique and how far down I can go. So I was going about parallel or so, but now I can go almost all the way down just like that, butt to the ground. And this is really good for getting a good deep stretch in my quads, in my glutes, just like that. So that's one of my favorites. Now, if you want to make it just a little bit more difficult, you can obviously add some weight and do it like this, which would be called a goblet squat. So I'm going down and then up, just like that. So that is the first exercise on our list. That is the squat and different variations of that. The next thing that we're gonna do is something called a Romanian deadlift. And we're gonna utilize some dumbbells for this. Now, I'm just using, for the purposes of this video, a couple of 5s. You'll probably wanna use a little bit heavier dumbbells, unless you're just starting off and you've never done this before. So the thing to keep in mind is when you're doing these, you should feel them in your hamstrings, your glutes, and your back, your lower back. But it should be like mostly in the hamstrings. If you're feeling it mostly in the back and none in your legs, then you know you probably need to work on your technique just a little bit. What it's gonna look like is I'm standing, the lower body is kind of in the same starting place as I was in the squat. My feet are hip to shoulder width apart, slightly pointed out, and I'm thinking about my knees coming out in the same direction as the toes. They're not caving in like that. So from there, what I'm gonna do is my hips are tucked in, and then I untuck my hips, same thing as with the squat. But now instead of bending at the knees, I push my hips back as far as I can. And as I'm going back, I'm leaning over so that I can stretch those hamstrings. Like I feel a big stretch in my hamstrings right there. And you'll notice my back is staying flat the whole time, even slightly arched. And I can feel a good stretch, and then I come back up. So this is the dumbbell Romanian deadlift. And another key note is these dumbbells aren't going out from my body, and I'm not rounding. Those two things. So if you do this, all the tension's in your lower back, not a good idea. But if you do this, back straight, moving the hips back, I can feel most of the tension in the heels of my feet slash kind of in the middle. You really want to be good and balanced, but you just don't want them on your toes. So just take all those notes right there and just really practice this. Think about moving the hips back instead of going down. So that's the second exercise. That is the dumbbell Romanian deadlift. Now, if you have a barbell, you could obviously use a barbell with that as well. Just make sure the bar is dragging down your legs the whole time. Third exercise is one of my favorites. This is called a pistol squat. Now this one's a hard one to do. So you really need a chair, a bench, or a box or something like that. You have to have a good amount of stability when you do this, and it can be really hard starting off. And you may want something that's just a little above the knee starting off. So what you can do is add like a pad like this. If you're already like really strong in your legs and have good stability, you may not need this. So what it is a pistol squat is like a single leg squat. Now some people can do these without a bench or a chair or anything, and they can go all the way to the ground, have great technique. That's personally not me. I haven't worked on them that much, but what you can do instead is just start right here, go down, touch, and then come back up. So my one leg is in front of me. I'm kind of tilted over because if I just were upright like this, I would fall back as I go down. So I'll switch sides, switch legs so you can kind of see what this side looks like, the working leg. My legs are together, this leg's out, and I flex my toes up. I have my hands out here. You could also have a dumbbell, and that will help balance you as well. So what it looks like is this. You can see I've got to really concentrate so that I stay balanced everything. But yeah, I can feel a lot, just in those 3 reps that I just did, I can feel it a lot in the quads. That's an excellent quad exercise. So we've kind of really balanced it out with the RDLs really hitting the back of the legs. We balance it out with that, with this quad exercise, the squats kind of hitting the whole of the legs. So now I want to go into something called a Bulgarian split squat, which is, I'll just say all of my clients love Bulgarian split squats. It's everyone's favorite. So this one really hits the quads a lot. It hits the glutes a lot as well. This is one of my favorite exercises. Also, if you're an athlete or you want to get better at stretching out your legs or sprinting and being in that split stance kind of position, this is a really great exercise for that. So what it looks like is, remember, you don't have to have a bench, but if you have a chair, you have a couch or something like that, what you're going to do is put 1 foot back, 1 foot out in front. Now, from here, if you wanted to add weight, you could have dumbbells right here, 1 dumbbell right there. But the most important thing is you go down, and I like to try to get this back knee close to the ground, and I feel a good stretch right there in my quad, and then come back up. So it looks like this. Now, there are a couple of different variations with this. You can also work the front leg a little bit more, kind of the glute, if you lean forward. And actually on the quad too. If you lean just a little bit more forward, you're actually gonna hit the quad a little bit more actually. And then if you lean back, you're gonna hit the glute just a little bit more. So that version, hitting the quad more, where you're leaning forward, would look something like this as compared to this. So see the difference right there? So whatever emphasis you wanna place, just choose one and stick with it. And then obviously when you get done with that leg, you'll come over and you'll do this leg. And then it can be really hard to balance on these as well. So if you need to hold on to a wall or like you have like a pole or something like that, that can be really helpful as well. All right, so exercise number 5 is one of my favorite split leg exercises. This is known as the elevated reverse lunge. This is a great exercise for your glutes. If you have a box, a step, or something that's like a few inches off the ground, that would work perfectly. I have this today, which also works for ankle stability and support. You'll see a lot of people in PT using this and kind of balancing like that. And you can see it's just a little bit wobbly. That works on the stability muscles. So that's just a little bonus tip for you. But what we can do is work on that, which is a bonus, as well as working on the glutes whenever we utilize this. So you can also have dumbbells in your hands to weigh it down and make it even more difficult for you. But if you don't, that obviously is totally fine. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on one leg at a time. So I have my left leg on, my right leg is off. And from there, I'm gonna go back and down. And the reason we elevate is so that I can go down even further and get a stretch in that glute, a little bit more of a stretch, like in my left glute right here. And that's better than if I were just straight up on the ground by itself, which is fine too. But as we know from research, the more stretch, probably the better, not just for flexibility, but for growing and strengthening that muscle through a full range of motion. So what it would look like on this side, something like that. And you don't have to touch the ground if you don't want to. It does make it kind of standard each time, so you know exactly what range of motion that you're using each time. But this is a really great exercise for really developing each leg one at a time. So that's why it's one of my favorites. Definitely make sure to give that one a shot if you haven't. So up next, we're going to go into something called hip thrust. Now, we worked a lot on the quads, we worked on the glutes. This one's going to really help with the glutes, but also with the hamstrings. So what this looks like is there's many different ways to do it, but what you're going to do is find a bench, find a chair or a couch or something like that, and you're going to go down to where your shoulder blades are on the bench. And then just like that power position that I was in with the squats, with the hip thrust, my feet are about hip to shoulder width apart. My knees are in the same direction as my toes, which are slightly pointed out. And then from there, my butt's gonna be down close to the ground. I'm not like rounding or anything like that or arching. I'm keeping everything pretty tight. Then from there, I'm bringing my hips up and then down. And at the top, I can feel it all through that posterior chain right there. Especially just holding it here, I can feel it right there in those hamstrings. So this is great for the posterior chain, just like that. Now, secondarily, you can do a version where your back is on the ground and your feet are up. This is another great variation. If you've been doing that other one for a long time and you just want to change it up, you could do it like this, where your hips come up, down, up, and down. So there's lots of different variations that you can do of hip thrust or bridges or anything similar. You could even do something like a single leg hip thrust, which would look like this. And that's even harder too. That, especially if you don't have weight, that's a really great way to make it harder. If you do have dumbbells, you could just place them right there on your hips as you go down and come up. That's the hip thrust. Now we're going to move on to step ups. All right, so another great single leg exercise is something known as the step up. Now, when you choose something like that's a right height for you, I would look for something that's about knee height, maybe a little lower, especially if you're just starting off, maybe about halfway up the shin or something like that. Now, if you're really advanced, you do these all the time, obviously you can go even higher. You could go like hip height or something like that. Another way, just like with all these exercises, to make it more difficult would be to have dumbbells in your hands. Now, if you don't have dumbbells, another way that you could weigh it down is to put a backpack on. So keep that in mind with all these different exercises like squats, RDLs, whatever it may be. You can always make them slightly harder by having a backpack, dumbbells, or anything like that. So what the step up looks like is I'm going to put one foot up. Now there's different variations obviously of this as well. My favorite is just keep one foot on the bench at all times, or the box or whatever you're stepping on. That way it's like more stable, because if you're like switching off and doing that sort of stuff, it can get a little bit more difficult to keep track and keep count of where you're at. So what I like to do is just one at a time, and it looks like this. One, and then I go down slow and controlled. You don't want to like fall down like that. You want to come up fairly slow and controlled. And you want to go down fairly slow and controlled, just like that. So everything's controlled, right? And I can feel that already burning in that quad right there. So again, you don't want to jump up like that, and you don't want to come down fast, right? Everything is slow and controlled. And now when I finish my reps with that side, I'll simply just change over to the other side and do the same thing. And just make sure to maintain your balance. For me, I've got to keep my hands out here. I think it's easier if you have dumbbells, honestly. It's kind of like you see those people balancing on like a tightrope or something, and they have, that long pole. That's kind of how the dumbbells make you feel when you're doing single leg exercises. Now we're going to move on to something called a kneeling squat. This is one of my favorite exercises for just solely focusing on the quads. So out of all of these exercises, a lot of them have been compound movements, which means that they work across multiple joints. You think about the squat, it works across the hip joint, the knee joint, the ankle joint even. With this is a way in which I've kind of found that you can work your quads out through just like a single joint. Now, we'll see another one right after this that works that way too. Of course, this is actually going to be through two joints. The next one will be through one joint. But regardless, this simplifies the process and makes it easy. And this is definitely, I would say, the easiest movement out of the entire list of 9. You can also do this from anywhere very easily. So what I do is I have a pad right here. You can also utilize a pillow. And I call this the kneeling squat. So what it looks like is I'm up on my knees just like this, and all I'm gonna do is go back down just like this. Now you can see I'm upright when I do this, and I'm going slow and controlled. And notice I'm getting a good stretch in my quads, and then I'm coming straight up. And now this is 100% quad work right here as I'm coming up just like that. Now, here's the trick. If you want to make it harder, obviously you could hold a dumbbell, you could hold weight or something, you could have a backpack on. But another thing to make it harder is you could just simply, instead of being upright with your body, you could lean back just slightly and you'll feel a huge difference right there. So what that would look like is like that, right? Now, what we're gonna do is the final exercise, and this is known as the reverse Nordic curl. Now, this is a really hard exercise to do unless you just have really practiced it a lot. So what I recommend for this is if you can get something like a band, or if you don't have a band, just having something to hold on to right next to you. And what I would do is just kind of wrap it around something. I've got this here. You could simply do it with whatever's very stable in your home or in your hotel or wherever you're training from. The difference is the kneeling squat, I'm bending at the hips a lot, right? And even the harder version, I'm bending at the hips, but I'm leaning back. Now on this one, what I'm gonna be doing is not bending at the hips at all and just leaning straight back. So what it looks like is this. My hips are tucked in they're tucked in the whole time. And then I'm going back just like that, as far as I can, and then back up. Now, if you're strong enough, you've worked on it, you don't need a band, but I highly recommend this starting off. And like I said, you could also simply hold on to something as well. This is a good, really, really good stretch right there in the quads. Just like that, and then back up just like that. Now, I've talked about like resistance bands that you can buy for other exercises, specifically like upper body exercises at the house that you can anchor into doors. That would be another great way in which you could do that. You could just anchor in a band in the door somewhere probably a little higher than your head height while you're kneeling, and you could try it out that way. So that is called the reverse Nordic curl. This is a great exercise for just really focusing on those quads. And if you don't have a band, or actually I'll give you an example of what it looks like if you don't have a band or you don't have any assistance. Now, keep in mind, I haven't really practiced these too much, so this is not my forte, but this is something of like what it would look like. Just like that. So you can see it's a very hard exercise. So I definitely recommend assistance, and you'll be well on your way to really developing those quads. And with all these exercises, your quads, your hamstrings, and your glutes are going to get really, really well developed. All right, so now you have a list of 9 of my favorite exercises utilizing really just body weight or just very limited equipment. And these exercises will help grow your legs into the foundation for the rest of your hero physique. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe. And feel free to check out the free core training guide linked in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.